There's a smell I've come to fear more than blood. It's sulfur. Sharp, bitter, thick like it's clinging to your lungs. The kind that doesn't float in from a fire or a gas leak. No, this smell doesn't belong to anything natural. It's how I always know he's near. I woke up to it again this morning. I live alone in a small cabin, just outside Ashford Hollow. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, enough dust to choke a rat. I built the place after I quit the force, told people I wanted peace. Truth is, I wanted walls thick enough to keep the whispers out. But today, like most days lately, they got through anyway. I sat up in bed, breathing hard. My t-shirt was soaked in sweat, clinging to me like plastic wrap. The morning air was still and cold. Colder than it should have been in June. Something wasn't right. Then I saw the mirror. The bathroom is just across the hall. I can see it from my bed, and this morning, the mirror above the sink was fogged over from the inside, like someone had just taken a scalding shower in the middle of the night. I hadn't. And then slowly something began to appear. A symbol, burned into the glass. A perfect circle, split down the center, with jagged lines curling out like roots. The same sigil from 1994. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared as my heart thudded against my ribs. He was back. I stood, grabbing the baseball bat I keep leaning by the door. Not that it would help if he really wanted in. I've seen what he can do. Wood, steel, fire. It's all useless when the thing you're fighting doesn't live by rules. Still, I walked to the mirror. I pressed my hand against the glass. Cold. Too cold. I whispered, "Eric?" even though I hated saying his name out loud. The bathroom light flickered, then steadied. Nothing happened. But something had changed. The mirror didn't show my reflection anymore. It showed me, yes, but not now, me at 17, covered in blood, eyes wide with fear. Behind me stood a figure in the dark. I didn't need to see his face. I knew the shape of that shadow by heart. I stumbled back. My foot hit the floorboard near the tub, the one that creaks like a scream. That same sulfur stink flooded my nostrils. I don't dream anymore. Not like normal people. I relive. And now whatever I locked away is trying to come back. My phone rang. The old landline. I keep it as a backup. I crossed the room and picked it up, my hand trembling more than I wanted to admit. "Brian Keller," I answered. "Detective Keller?" The voice was female, calm but strained. "Sorry, former detective. This is Deputy Moore, down at the Hollow Station. We've got something strange. A kid went missing near the old chapel site." My throat went dry. She continued. "We found his bike, but no footprints. Just a strange mark in the mud. Thought you might want to take a look. Sheriff said you knew about the place." My grip on the phone tightened. My voice came out low and tired. "Yeah," I said. "I know the place." She paused, waiting for me to say more. I didn't. After she hung up, I stood there for a long time, staring at the receiver in my hand. It had been 31 years since I walked out of that chapel alone. 31 years since the others died, and since Eric changed. I thought I buried the past. But the past doesn't stay dead. Not when it has your name carved into its bones. And today, I smelled sulfur again. That's never a coincidence. It's a warning. I parked the car where the road turned to gravel. From here on, it was only woods. Thick old woods. The kind where the trees grow too close and the shadows fall too long. The chapel ruins lay just beyond that wall of green. As I stepped out, the air hit me. Damp. Still. Like the forest had been holding its breath for 30 years, just waiting for me to come back. I walked slowly, every crunch of leaves under my boots louder than it should have been. I passed the old fence, half-rotted and swallowed by ivy. And then I saw it. The chapel. Or what was left of it. Stone walls blackened by time. Roof long gone. Vines curled around broken windows. It didn't look like a holy place anymore. It looked like something had chewed through it and left it to die. I stepped through the rusted frame of what used to be the front door. And just like that, I was back in 1994. That summer had burned itself into me. I was 17. Dumb. Reckless. And we thought the world owed us something just for surviving high school. It was my idea, of course. The ritual. We found that old book in a pawn shop in Pittsburgh. Leather cover. No title. Pages yellow and thin like dried skin. There were strange symbols and a chapter labeled The Calling. We laughed when we read it. It was Eric who dared us to do it. Eric always had that grin like he knew something you didn't. He could make anything sound like a joke. Even summoning a demon. There were 5 of us that night. Me. Eric. Kyle. Jesse. And Nate. We brought candles, wine, a speaker playing backwards Latin chants we downloaded from some shady corner of the early internet. It was all supposed to be a game. The altar was made from a broken pew. We drew the sigil in salt and red chalk. At least we thought it was chalk. Eric read from the book. At first, nothing happened. Then the wind stopped. I remember the candles flaring all at once. Then, blowing out without a sound. It was pitch black. I heard Kyle say, "Guys," and then I heard something tear. Not paper. Not fabric. Flesh. There was screaming. A girl's voice, I think Jessie's, then a wet choking sound. Something brushed past me, fast and freezing cold. I don't remember running. Or screaming. Only silence. When I came to, it was morning. The sun was low, pale and cold. I was lying in the dirt with the book in my hands. Blood on the pages. My friends were gone. All of them. The police found nothing. No bodies. No proof. Just me. I told them a wild animal attacked us. They called me the miracle boy. Said I must have blacked out from fear. I never told them about the sigil. Or the voice I heard whisper from the darkness. Thank you. Now, standing here again, I walked to the center of the chapel where the circle had once been. And there it was, clear as the day we drew it. The sigil. Fresh. Carved into the stone. Like someone had traced over it just yesterday. A breeze passed through the broken wall. It smelled like smoke and copper. I felt something watching me. I whispered, "Eric?" No answer. But in the trees something moved. Not an animal. Not wind. Something heavier. I backed away slowly. And that's when I saw it, scratched into the stone just above the altar. "You never finished it." I turned and ran. I didn't care about the cracked earth or the branches tearing at my coat. When I reached my car, my hands were shaking. I looked at the mirror, half expecting to see someone sitting in the back seat. But there was no one. Just my own pale, frightened face staring back. And behind my eyes, a memory started to surface, something Eric whispered to me during the ritual. Something I had forgotten or blocked out. His words were slow, like he was reading from the book, but with certainty. Like he meant them. Blood binds. Names awaken. Silence feeds. And one must remain. He looked at me when he said that. And now, 30 years later, I finally understood what he meant. One must remain. To let the demon find its way back. And that one was me. I left the sheriff's office with more questions than answers. The kid's name was Jacob Turner. 17. Just a year older than Eric was when he died. If he died. They found Jacob's car near the old chapel ruins, still running. His backpack was in the back seat, schoolbooks inside untouched. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just gone. I drove straight to Jacob's house. His mother opened the door, her eyes swollen and red. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I introduced myself as a private investigator working on missing persons. Technically true, though I left out the part about demons. She let me in without a word. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that presses against your ears. I followed her down the hallway to Jacob's room. She didn't come in with me. Just stood there like she couldn't cross the threshold. I understood the feeling. His room was neat. A little too neat. Posters on the walls, bands I didn't recognize. A bookshelf full of fantasy novels. A laptop on the desk, closed. I walked over and flipped it open. Password protected. Of course. I turned toward the nightstand. A notebook sat on top, its black cover half torn. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. The first few were normal. Homework notes, doodles, a few angsty rants about school. But about halfway through, the handwriting changed. It got sloppier, more rushed. The lines were written with pressure, the ink cutting deep into the paper. One phrase repeated over and over. "He speaks like my friend, but he isn't human." I stared at those words for a long time. I knew that feeling. The notebook slipped from my fingers and landed with a dull thud on the floor. I bent down to pick it up and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above Jacob's desk. Only it wasn't me. I froze. My reflection was standing still, but not right. The face was mine, but younger. Much younger. And smiling. I wasn't smiling. My hands began to tremble. The reflection raised a hand, slowly, and dragged one finger down the surface of the mirror, leaving a long smear behind. Except nothing was on the glass. No fog. No dust. Just the sound. Nails on glass. A slow, horrible squeal. I stepped back. My foot hit the edge of the bed, and I nearly tripped. Then the reflection's eyes changed. Black. No whites. No pupils. Just a deep, endless black. It opened its mouth, but no words came out. Just a soft, wet gurgling sound like something trying to speak underwater. I blinked, and it was gone. My reflection returned to normal. Tired, older, scared. I stood there for a few more seconds, catching my breath, trying to slow my heartbeat. It felt like my chest had turned to stone. I grabbed the notebook and left the room. Jacob's mother didn't ask what I found. I didn't offer anything. But before I stepped out the door, she whispered something that chilled me more than the mirror did. He said a name the night before he disappeared. Over and over in his sleep. I turned to her slowly. What name? She swallowed hard. Her voice was barely audible. Eric. The name hit me like a slap across the face. I nodded once, thanked her, and walked out into the cold air. The wind had picked up. The trees were swaying in that slow, deliberate way, like they were watching me. Eric. He was back, and he wasn't hiding anymore. I parked my car in front of the library, though calling it that was generous. The place looked more like an old funeral home than a library. White paint peeling off the walls, tall narrow windows, and a rusted weather vane that screeched every time the wind picked up. The same creak it made back in '94. I hadn't been inside this building since high school, since before the ritual. But if anyone in Ashford Hollow remembered the truth, or at least the pieces we weren't supposed to know, it was Mrs. Carson. The wooden door groaned as I pushed it open. The smell of dust and old paper filled my nose, and somehow it was comforting. A reminder that some things, at least, hadn't changed. She sat at the front desk like always, her gray hair tied back in a bun so tight it looked painful. Her glasses were perched halfway down her nose, and her eyes were fixed on a yellowed book that looked older than both of us. I cleared my throat. Her eyes shifted up, and for a second, they were just confused. Then recognition hit her like a slow-burning match. Brian Keller, she whispered, like saying my name might break something in the air. I didn't expect to see you here. I need your help, I said, stepping closer. It's happening again. Her lips tightened. She stood slowly, the chair creaking behind her. You should have left that behind, like the rest of us. I shook my head. You know I couldn't. Not when people are going missing again. Same area. Same signs. It's back, Mrs. Carson. Or maybe it never left. She sighed and motioned me to follow her. We moved through the shelves, her steps slow, deliberate. She stopped near the back corner, local records and archives. The lights above us flickered once. Maybe bad wiring. Or maybe not. She unlocked a dusty file cabinet, the key trembling slightly in her hand. After that night, she began, the sheriff told us to keep it quiet. Said it was best for the town. We were told Eric's death was an accident. The others? Missing. They didn't want panic. Or questions. She pulled out a thin, red folder. It wasn't labeled. But I kept this, she said. I wasn't sure why. Something about it felt unfinished. She handed it to me. Inside was an old news clipping, dated 2 days after the night at the chapel. The headline read, Boy found in shock near burned chapel, claims voices in the smoke. But it wasn't about me. It was about Caleb Rain. The name hit me like a punch. Caleb had been one of the other kids at school. Quiet. Obsessed with myths and demons. He wasn't part of our group. But according to this, he'd been found wandering the woods after the ritual. He said something came out of the fire. That it spoke through the smoke. Then he vanished. I looked up at Mrs. Carson. Why didn't anyone talk about this? They tried. But strange things started happening to those who did. Dead pets. House fires. One man went blind overnight. They stopped asking questions after that. I flipped through the rest of the folder. A grainy photo of Caleb, pale and wide-eyed. A police report with most of the text blacked out. And one more thing, a rough sketch. A symbol. Same as the one burned into my mirror this morning. Do you know where he is now? I asked. Mrs. Carson hesitated. He's alive. Or at least, he was last year. Lives out by the quarry. Folks say he built a shack out there, away from town. Doesn't come in anymore. Doesn't talk to anyone. Some say he's lost his mind. Others say he's the only one who ever understood what really happened. I nodded, closing the folder. Then I need to talk to him. As I turned to leave, she grabbed my arm. Brian, she said, eyes sharp and scared. If you go out there, be careful what you listen to. The voices don't always lie. But they never tell the whole truth. I gave her a weak smile. I know. I've been hearing them for 30 years. The wind howled outside as I stepped into the fading light. I had a new name. A new path. But deep down, I already knew. Caleb didn't just survive the ritual. He understood it. And maybe, just maybe, he knew how to end it. The drive to Caleb Rain's place felt like heading into a grave I forgot I dug. I hadn't seen him since high school, not really seen him. Back then, he was just the quiet kid with a pocket full of bones and notebook pages that looked like they were written in blood. People said he drank goat blood once. Others said he could talk to crows. The truth? I didn't know. I never talked to him much. But now, 20-something years later, I needed him more than anyone. Ashford Hollow faded behind me, swallowed by trees that leaned too close to the road, like they were listening. The deeper I drove into the woods, the quieter everything became. Even the wind gave up. My tires crackled on gravel. My breath fogged the windshield. Somewhere in those woods, I knew something was watching me, but it wasn't ready to pounce. Not yet. I found Caleb's place after the third wrong turn. His trailer sat in the middle of nowhere, wrapped in rusted metal and surrounded by a maze of wind chimes, animal skulls, and tall sticks with symbols burned into them. I stepped out of my car slowly. The air smelled like smoke and old earth. Before I could knock, the door creaked open. "Don't speak," Caleb said. "Not until you cross the ward." I hesitated. He pointed to a line of salt and dried thorns laid across the step. I stepped over it, careful not to break the line. Inside, his place was a disaster of books, bones, and candles melted into shapes that looked too close to human. The air was thick with something sharp, burned sage maybe, or something darker. He looked older than me. Deep lines carved his face. His eyes were sunken and wild, like he hadn't slept in years. But they were clear, focused, still sharp. "You saw it again, didn't you?" he said, motioning for me to sit. I nodded. "It's Eric. He's back." Caleb didn't flinch. He reached for a small wooden box and opened it, revealing a folded piece of black cloth. He unwrapped it like it was sacred. Inside was a bone-white coin, covered in tiny carved letters. "This coin was used by the Ardor sect," he whispered. "They were demon binders. Ancient. Forgotten. But some of their symbols still work. Sit still." He pressed the coin into my palm. It burned. Not hot, not painful, just heavy. Like it knew me. "You feel that?" he asked. I nodded. "What is it?" "It's a tether," he said. "Same as you." I looked up. "What do you mean, same as me?" He leaned closer. I could see the scars running down his neck now, like someone had tried to peel him open. "You think that ritual in 1994 was random? That you and your friends just happened to summon something? You were chosen, Brian. Or rather, Eric was. His bloodline goes back centuries. Someone in his family made a pact a long time ago. And you," he pointed a shaking finger at me. "You were the vessel." "No," I said, my voice barely holding steady. "I killed it. I killed Eric. I watched him burn." "You killed the shell," Caleb said, eyes narrowing. "But the demon stayed. It never left you. It's been inside you, sleeping, waiting. Every time you dream of him, every time you see him in mirrors, it's not a memory. It's a signal. He's waking up." I stood up. The air felt thinner suddenly. "What does it want?" "It wants to live. It wants to walk again. And it can't, unless you let it." Silence fell between us. Somewhere outside, wind chimes started to scream. "The next blood moon is in 7 days," Caleb said. "If the ritual completes, it'll become permanent. You won't just see Eric. You'll be him." I stepped back, heart pounding. "So what do I do?" Caleb turned to a cabinet and pulled out a notebook, pages full of symbols and warnings. Some were drawn in red ink. Some weren't ink. "You fight it, but not with guns or fire. You fight it with memory, with truth. The more you remember, the less power it has. But if you lie to yourself, if you run again, it'll win. And you'll be lost." I looked at the coin still pressed into my palm. It didn't burn anymore. It just sat there quiet and cold, like it was waiting. The town was breathing differently. I could feel it in the air. You ever wake up and know something's off before your eyes even open? That was me this morning. It was like the silence itself had teeth. My cabin creaked, not from the wind, but like it was exhaling. Watching. I sat up, sweating. The heater was off, but my skin felt hot. My sheets were tangled, soaked. Another nightmare I couldn't remember, only the echo of it. I reached for the water bottle on the nightstand, and froze. My hands were dirty. Mud under the fingernails. Dried blood on my wrist. I stared for a long time. I hadn't left the house. Had I? I got up slowly and checked the door. Locked from the inside. But the doormat was pushed sideways like someone, or something, had dragged it with their foot. I opened the door and looked down. Fresh footprints. Bare. Leading away from the cabin and into the woods. I didn't follow them. Not yet. I showered first. Tried to shake the feeling that my body had moved without me. And all the while, in the back of my head, I kept hearing Eric's voice from the mirror 2 nights ago. You left me behind, remember? By noon I was back in town. Ashford Hollow looked normal at a glance, but if you stared too long, it unraveled. A woman stood outside the bakery, holding a paper bag with nothing inside. She just stood there, breathing through her mouth, staring at the sidewalk. A kid was sitting on the swing in front of the park, eyes closed, slowly rocking back and forth like he was listening to something only he could hear. And the mayor's truck was still running in front of the post office. Doors open. No one inside. I parked my Jeep and walked toward the sheriff's office. My boots echoed louder than they should have on the concrete. The whole town was too quiet. I opened the door, and the bell above it chimed like it always did. But nobody answered. No receptionist. No chatter from the back room. Just the hum of an old vending machine and the faint ticking of a clock that hadn't worked in years. That's when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. I followed it past the desks and into the holding cells. There in cell 2 was Lila Martin. She was sitting on the bench, tapping her forehead gently against the wall. Again and again. No blood. Just the sound. Tap, tap, tap. I spoke her name. She stopped but didn't turn around. I took a step closer. She whispered something. I leaned in. He said the stars are falling. He said they fall into our eyes when we sleep. I didn't respond. I just backed away. Something was happening to the people here. A sickness, but not the kind you can trace. Not a virus. Not a chemical. Something older. Deeper. Possession? Influence? I left the station and headed toward the only place I hadn't dared visit since the first boy disappeared, the edge of the woods. The trees stood like blackened ribs, bare and bone-white under the overcast sky. I parked at the trail entrance and stepped out. Wind stirred the branches, and I thought I heard my name. Then I saw it. At the base of a rotting oak, there was a pile of clothes. A girl's jacket. Muddy jeans. Shoes placed neatly beside them like someone had undressed on purpose. And next to it, carved into the trunk with jagged precision, was the sigil. The same one that haunted my dreams. The same one that had appeared in my mirror. A spiral of lines, intersecting at impossible angles. It pulsed, even though it was just bark. I turned around to leave and stopped cold. There, 10 feet up, tangled in the branches of a crooked pine, was the girl. But not like you'd think. She was hanging there, not by rope, but by her limbs bent backward like a spider. Head cocked at an unnatural angle. Eyes wide open. And she was smiling. That smile chased me all the way back to my car. I drove too fast, barely breathing, every bump in the road feeling like fingers brushing my back. Back at the cabin, I locked the doors, closed the blinds, sat in the corner with a shotgun across my knees, and tried to make sense of it all. The hollow was changing, and whatever Eric was, whatever he had become, he wasn't just haunting me anymore. He was spreading, taking root, and this town, this place that once chewed up my youth, was ready to swallow me whole again. Only this time, I didn't think it would spit me back out. I didn't want to go back to the attic. I hadn't been up there since the winter of 2007, when I threw a duffel bag full of old photo albums and VHS tapes into a dusty corner and nailed the trapdoor shut. That part of the house had always felt off. Too quiet, too still, like the air refused to move. Even when the wind screamed through the trees outside, that room remained silent. Dead silent. But that night, after Caleb's body was dragged out of his trailer and the woods went dark and heavy, I felt something pull at me. Not physically, not even emotionally. It was deeper. A pressure behind the eyes, like a hand guiding my head toward the ceiling. Something wanted me up there. So I went. The ladder creaked as I pulled myself up. Cobwebs brushed my face. The light bulb up there had long since died, so I brought a flashlight. It flickered. Faintly. I told myself it was just a weak battery. The attic hadn't changed. Everything was still covered in a layer of dust thick enough to write names in. Boxes, old furniture, a broken typewriter, and in the farthest corner, that duffel bag. Exactly where I left it. My heart pounded faster as I unzipped it. At first, it was just what I remembered. Faded photos. A few newspaper clippings about the 1994 chapel fire. An old camcorder. Then, buried beneath a blue flannel shirt, there was something new. Something I didn't put there. An envelope. Yellowed with age. No stamp. No name on the outside. I opened it. Inside were 3 letters, folded neatly. each written in that same messy, jagged scrawl I hadn't seen since high school. Eric's handwriting. The first letter was dated August 21st, 1994. That was 5 days before the ritual. Brian, I keep dreaming about fire. About doors with no handles. I know you think this is just for fun, but something's coming. I hear it in the trees when the wind dies down. I think the book is real. I think it chose you. If I disappear, don't believe what they say about me. Eric. I sat there for a long time, just staring at those words. My breath fogged the paper. My hands started to shake. He never gave me this. I unfolded the second letter. No date this time. Just smeared ink and what looked like a small bloodstain in the corner. You left me. You ran when I screamed. You looked me in the eye while it took me. And still you left. But don't worry, I'm learning how to come back. You made sure of that. We'll finish what we started soon. My mouth went dry. I folded the paper back, hands trembling, and reached for the last letter. This one was different. Clean. Crisp. No stains. But the date at the top hit me like a hammer. July 3rd, 2025. That was next week. You've done well to survive this long. But survival isn't the same as living, is it? I've been patient, Brian. I've watched you drink yourself to sleep, bury your nightmares in fake cases and empty bottles. The chapel's waiting. You know where to go. You know what I need. You'll be ready when it's time. My fingers tightened around the paper until it crinkled. This wasn't just a haunting anymore. He was planning something. He was giving me time to think, time to walk right into it. Whatever Eric had become, it wasn't satisfied with watching me suffer. It wanted to use me. And the worst part, some dark part of me wanted it too. For years, I'd wondered why I survived that night. Why I didn't burn with the others. Why I kept dreaming of Eric's face in the firelight, smiling as the shadows swallowed him whole. Now I knew. I was never meant to escape. Just to carry him. The attic groaned behind me, like something shifting in the dark. I shoved the letters back in the envelope, closed the duffel, and climbed down the ladder with shaking legs. As I pulled the trapdoor shut, I caught my reflection in the dusty hallway mirror. But it wasn't mine. Eric smiled back at me. Then he was gone, and the house went silent again. I didn't sleep the night before. Not really. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, eyes locked on the front door. The wind howled like it was trying to speak a forgotten language. I could hear faint scratches from the attic, just enough to make me wonder if I imagined them. I didn't light a fire. I didn't move much. I just waited. For what? I wasn't sure. At 3:12 a.m., my phone rang. I flinched so hard I dropped it. The screen lit up, Caleb Rain. I answered, voice dry and shaking. Caleb? There was only static at first. Then I heard his breath, fast and shallow, like someone was sitting on his chest. You were right, he whispered. It's not coming, it's already here. What are you talking about? I stood, already grabbing my coat. What did you see? The fire. It doesn't keep him out anymore. Brian, he's in the smoke. He's wearing your face. And he touched the seal. Reversed it. I think I let him in. The line cut off. I stared at the phone for a second, listening to the dead silence on the other end. Then I moved. Fast. I grabbed the keys, left the lights off, and drove like the devil was in my back seat. In some ways, I think he was. Caleb's trailer sat deep in the woods, hidden behind layers of trees and hanging fog. It used to feel protected. Sacred, even. But tonight it felt hollow. The front door was half open, one hinge torn loose. His protective wards, those symbols he carved into the trees, had been burned away. Black ash clung to the bark. My boots crunched glass as I stepped inside. The air was thick, metallic. Then I saw him. Caleb's body was slumped in the corner, arms sprawled like a broken doll. His stomach had been opened wide, and blood covered the walls. But it wasn't random. The blood formed a symbol. A spiral made of intersecting lines, drawn backward. It pulsed faintly like it was breathing. I covered my mouth and stumbled forward. No, Caleb. His eyes were still open. But they weren't staring at me. They were locked on the ceiling, wide with terror. His mouth was stuck open, like his last breath never made it out. I knelt beside him, shaking. My hand brushed something beneath his coat. A notebook, half burned at the edges. The last page had a single line scrawled in red ink. He said I'd make a good door. I heard something move behind me. Not a step. More like breathing. Close. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty trailer and the darkness pressing through the windows. But then I heard him. Eric's voice. Soft. right behind my ear. "You're next, Brian." I turned again, wild, frantic. Still no one there. But the mirror near the sink? It was fogged over. And in it, I saw him. Not the Eric I remembered. This one was pale wrong. His eyes were hollow, but inside them I saw something burning. And his mouth curled into a smile I'd seen only once before, right before the ritual went wrong. He lifted one hand and dragged a finger across his throat. Then he vanished. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding, blood roaring in my ears. I should have called someone. The police. Anyone. But what would I say? Instead, I grabbed the notebook, stepped out of the trailer, and walked back into the woods. The fog followed me, and from somewhere deep within it, I heard Eric humming. It was the song we used to sing in the summer of '94. Right before everything died. I didn't sleep. Not really. Not the kind of sleep where you forget the world and drift. No, I just closed my eyes and waited. Waited for the voices to come again. Waited for the shadows to move. Waited for him. But when sleep finally did take me, it dragged me straight into the fire. I was back in the chapel. 1994, the night it all began. But this time, the dream was different. The floor was wet with something thick and dark. The candles flickered in unnatural ways, stretching shadows that didn't match the people in the room. I saw myself, younger, shaking, holding the old grimoire with trembling fingers. And I saw Eric, smiling. He always smiled, even when he was scared. Especially when he was scared. The others were there too. Nathan, Danny, Jules. Laughing nervously, mocking the ritual as if it were a joke. But Eric leaned in close to the book. He whispered something, and then the flames on the candles went blue. The air grew heavy. Something came. It didn't walk. It didn't crawl. It simply was. A figure of smoke and bone, hovering between the veils of this world and the next. It had no face, but it looked at Eric. Reached out. A hand, no, a limb made of coiling ash, touched Eric's chest. Right above his heart. He didn't scream. He didn't move. But I felt it. Something ancient tethered itself to him. And in that moment, I understood. The ritual didn't summon a demon. It woke it. And it chose Eric. That's why he never died. The fire around us flared up, walls cracking, the wood screaming. My younger self backed away. Ran. Cowered. I woke up gasping, covered in sweat, with the taste of ash in my mouth. The cabin was silent. Too silent. I stood unsteady, and made my way to the kitchen sink to splash cold water on my face. When I looked up, there was something under the mirror. A symbol, carved into the wood of the sink's frame. I bent closer. It was a sigil. Not the one from the bathroom mirror. This one was different. Intricate, almost delicate. At its center was a name, spelled in a crooked, ancient language. But I could read it. Somehow I knew it. Azuril. I stumbled back. That name, it had been in the grimoire. Buried in the margins, handwritten in red ink. The name we had skipped over. The name Eric had circled. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And something else hit me like a brick. Eric's not the only one it wants. I am the tether. It used Eric as a door. But I am the key. I grabbed my notebook and scribbled everything I remembered from the dream. Every symbol. Every detail of that hand pressing into Eric's chest. And then I remembered something Caleb once said. If it ever speaks its true name in your presence, and you understand it, you've already been marked. Marked. I looked down at my own chest, pulled down my shirt collar. A bruise. A shape. The same one I saw in the dream. Burn into my skin like a warning. Or an invitation. No more waiting. I packed what I needed. Caleb's notes, the flare gun, a mirror shard, salt, rope, and a recording tape. And I whispered something I hadn't said in years. Eric, I'm coming back. Outside, the wind picked up. Trees moaned. The scent of burning wood drifted through the window. The chapel was calling me. And I had no choice but to answer. The wind howled outside my truck like it knew something was coming. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the thing that wasn't supposed to be there. The chapel. The same damn chapel we burned down in 1994. Except it wasn't ashes now. It stood tall and whole, like it had never been touched. Stone walls clean, wooden cross nailed above the rusted doors. Its stained glass windows flickered with orange light from inside. But no one had gone in. No one had built it back. And yet, there it was like it had just been waiting for tonight. The blood moon hung low behind it, big and swollen like an open wound in the sky. It bled red light over the field, painting the grass and the trees in a soft crimson. I didn't need a calendar. I knew this was the night Caleb warned me about. If Eric was ever going to return fully, it would be now. I reached over to the passenger seat. Caleb's notes were in a leather-bound journal, the edges singed and dark. I flipped through the pages with shaking fingers until I found the final instructions he'd written before he died. His handwriting was crooked, rushed, like he didn't have much time left. Mirror to break illusion. Blood to open the door. Fire to seal it shut. I tucked the journal into my coat, slid the mirror shard into my back pocket, and picked up the flare gun. It felt too light, too useless. But it was all I had. I stepped out of the truck. The cold hit me like a slap. It wasn't just winter cold, it was something deeper. Like the kind of cold you feel when you're completely alone in the world. My boots crunched over the frost-bitten grass as I walked toward the chapel. Every step felt heavier than the last. Ashford Hollow was silent. No crickets. No birds. No wind through the trees. Just me and whatever waited inside. The doors creaked open before I touched them. Of course they did. Inside, it looked exactly the same as the last time I saw it in 1994. Wooden pews, dusty altar, melted candles in a circle. But this time, the candles were lit, even though I saw no one there to light them. At the far end of the room, in the pulpit, stood someone. No, not someone. Eric. 17, just like he was the night we summoned the thing. Same flannel shirt, same blood on his sleeves. His eyes found me, and he smiled like we were still friends. Been a long time, Bree, he said. My throat tightened. You're not him, I said. He took a step forward. His boots made no sound on the floor. Maybe not, but I remember everything he did. I remember how you left me. I swallowed hard. You died. No, he whispered, you killed me. The candles flickered. The air grew thick, like I was breathing through smoke. I took out the mirror shard and held it up. Eric's reflection didn't match his movements. He stepped forward, but his reflection stayed put. I had him. He lunged. I ducked under his swing and smashed the mirror shard across his face. His scream tore through the chapel like thunder. The walls trembled. The stained glass cracked. Behind his bleeding face, I saw something dark, something ancient, writhing beneath the skin. The illusion broke. He wasn't Eric. He was something wearing Eric like a mask. You think you can stop this? The demon growled through Eric's mouth. His voice was layered, Eric's tone and something else behind it, deeper, hungrier. I'm not stopping it, I said. I'm finishing it. I pulled the knife from my belt and stabbed my hand, letting the blood drip into the circle carved into the floorboards. The sigils around the chapel pulsed. The light grew dim. The floor groaned beneath us. You were chosen, Brian, the demon said, stumbling back. You could have ruled beside me. I pulled out the flare gun. You should have stayed dead. I fired. The flare hit the center of the circle and exploded in white-hot light. The flames erupted like they'd been waiting all along. The circle burned bright. The demon screamed again, this time higher, more like a beast being torn apart. The chapel began to fall in on itself. The windows shattered. The roof cracked open. Fire climbed the walls like it knew its job. I turned and ran. The air behind me warped, howled, twisted. I didn't look back. Not when the screams turned to laughter. Not when the ground shook and the sky flashed. Not even when I heard Eric's voice one last time, whispering from the burning rubble. It's not over, Brian. I kept running until the night turned quiet again. And when I looked up, the blood moon was gone. But I knew he wasn't. I stepped into the chapel, and the air died. The door creaked shut behind me like it had a mind of its own, sealing me in. The wood under my boots was too new, too clean, like it had never burned, like the fire from all those years ago had been a lie. The candles along the pews flickered, but there was no wind. And the chapel, once nothing but a charred ruin, stood now whole again. Every stone, every stained glass window, every nail perfect. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Or maybe that wasn't my heart. Maybe it was something beneath the floorboards, waiting. Then I saw them. My friends. All 5 of them, Kevin, Sarah, Mike, Tanya, and Eric, sitting in the front pews, laughing like it was summer break again. Kevin had a can of soda in his hand. Sarah was flipping through her notebook, doodling stars like she always used to. Tanya was snapping her gum. They were frozen in time, 17, untouched by death. But they were wrong. Their faces were stretched. Too smooth. Their eyes didn't blink. The laughter echoed, even after their mouths had closed. I knew then it wasn't them. It never had been. I walked down the center aisle, the sound of my boots echoing like gunshots. My hands were trembling. I kept one on the flare gun tucked in my coat. The other clutched the mirror shard, its edge still crusted with Caleb's dried blood. Eric stood by the altar. He hadn't changed. Same black hair, same crooked smile, same leather jacket. But when he looked up at me, his eyes were hollow, like someone had scooped out the soul and left behind a face pretending to feel. "Long time, Bree," he said. "You made it." My throat was dry, but I spoke anyway. "This ends tonight." He laughed. "You said that in '94. Remember what happened?" I remembered. The blood. The screaming. The way Eric's body bent backward as the shadow poured into him. I remembered holding the knife. I remembered burying it in his chest, thinking that would be the end. But demons don't die the way people do. Eric stepped forward. With every step, the chapel seemed to shift. The walls cracked, the glass melted, and the pews behind me rotted into splinters. It was like the building was breathing with him. "You killed me, Brian. Or tried to. And I let you believe that," he said softly. "But I needed time. Time to grow. Time for you to ripen. What do you want from me?" I asked. He stopped a few feet away. "You." The word hit like a hammer. "You're my anchor. The reason I'm still tethered here. All those years, all those voices in your dreams, all the disappearances, it was all so you'd come back. So you'd remember." "I didn't forget," I whispered. "Not a single damn day." Eric smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only hunger. He raised his hand, and suddenly my body jerked forward like I was on puppet strings. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My legs dragged me to him. "You feel it, don't you?" he said. "The blood we spilled bound us. What you did made us one. I'm not like you. But you could be. Just let go. I'll take the pain. The guilt. The memories. You'll never feel anything again." His voice wrapped around me like smoke. Sweet. Seductive. Full of promises I didn't want to admit I craved. And for one heartbeat, I almost believed him. But then I saw Sarah. Her face twisted, her mouth locked in a silent scream behind him. The real her. What was left of her. A soul trapped in the background like a flickering candle trying to stay lit. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about me. He'd taken them. Kept them. Fed on them. I gritted my teeth and forced my hand to move. Just enough. "Then take it," I said. "Take all of it." I shoved the mirror shard into his chest. He staggered. The glass flashed bright as lightning, and for a moment I saw his real form. Not Eric. Something older. Bone-white skin. Horns curling like broken tree branches. A mouth that stretched from ear to ear, filled with black teeth. He shrieked. The chapel cracked. I pulled the flare gun and fired into the blood-soaked sigil at our feet. Flame exploded. The circle lit up like a sun in the dark. Eric screamed. No, it screamed. The demon howled in fury and pain, twisting as fire licked up the walls and down the pews. The illusion shattered. My friends faded into smoke. And I stood there, breathing hard, watching the demon burn. The chapel began to collapse. But I didn't run. I stared into the fire until I couldn't see him anymore. Until I was sure he was gone. Then I turned and walked out into the night. Behind me, the chapel screamed and crumbled, but the sky was just starting to bleed light. I had survived. Again. But I knew this wasn't over. It never really is. Not with demons. Not when they were the face of someone you loved. I didn't think the air could get heavier, but it did. Inside the old chapel, the world felt wrong. The pews were gone. The wooden cross that once hung above the altar was upside down and burned black. The walls pulsed like lungs. Every breath I took felt stolen, like I wasn't supposed to be here. Like I had already died and just hadn't realized it. The sigils Caleb carved into my chest burned beneath my shirt. They throbbed in time with my heartbeat, fast, panicked, uneven. Then I saw him. Eric. He stepped out from behind the altar like he never left. Still 17. Still grinning like he had a secret. "Long time, Bree," he said. His voice echoed, like a dozen mouths were speaking at once. I raised the mirror shard I'd carried since Caleb's trailer. My hand shook, but I didn't lower it. "You're not him," I said. "You're just wearing what's left." Eric laughed. It was hollow and wrong. "Oh, I'm more him than you think. And more you than you'd like." The floor cracked beneath my boots. Roots pushed up from the wooden planks, black and slick with blood. They slithered toward me like snakes. "I remember that night," I said. "You screamed, begged me not to leave. But I ran. I thought you were already gone. You wanted me gone," he said. "You knew what we did, what we called." He stepped closer. The air rippled around him. His face flickered, one moment Eric, the next a mask of rotted flesh and burning eyes. You let me die, Brian. No, I whispered more to myself than him. I tried to stop it. I didn't know what we summoned. Eric's head tilted. But you do now. You've always known. That's why you never left this town. That's why you talk to ghosts in the mirror and sleep with salt under your bed. He pointed to the sigil circle drawn in my blood. You think that's going to stop me? You think you're stronger now? I stepped inside the circle, raised the flare gun. My voice was calm, but my soul trembled. I'm not stronger, I said. I'm just finished running. He snarled, and the chapel bent around him. The walls curled like old paper. The roof disappeared, revealing a sky full of stars that pulsed red. You'll never be free, Brian. I'm in your bones. Your blood. You are the door. He lunged, arms stretching unnaturally wide. His hands, black with rot, grabbed my shoulders. His eyes stared into mine, and I saw it all again. The candles. The Latin words. Eric's face as he was dragged down. His scream. And my back as I ran. You could have saved me, he whispered. I looked him in the eye. No, I said. But I can save myself. Then I pulled the trigger. The flare gun fired in a burst of light and heat. The flame caught the blood. The sigils lit up around me, blinding white, like a second sun inside that cursed place. Eric screamed. It wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was ancient, like the sound the earth might make if it were split in half. He flailed backward, caught in the firelight. His skin cracked like old paint, falling away in chunks. Beneath it was smoke. Screaming smoke. The chapel burned. But the fire wasn't normal. It didn't spread. It devoured. Swallowed up the walls, the altar, the roots, the voices. Everything. And then silence. Ash. Cold wind. Morning. I stood in the smoking remains of the chapel. My clothes were scorched. My skin was burned in places I couldn't feel yet. But I was alive. For now. I walked out as the sun cracked over the trees. No birds sang. No people moved. Just me. Just quiet. But I knew what that meant. The demon was gone. But the door? Still open. And I was still the key. I keep the lights dim these days. Bright lights cast shadows, and shadows move when you're not watching. It's been 3 months since the chapel burned. The townspeople are quiet now. Ashford Hollow looks the same from the outside, but something has changed underneath. Some left town. Some forgot. Some, like Sheriff Duncan, just stopped talking altogether. Like their memories were taken and locked away, and they're too afraid to look for the key. But I remember everything. I remember Eric's face, not the demons but the real Eric. My best friend. The boy who used to sneak cigarettes behind the bleachers with me, who laughed too loud at horror movies, who once swore we'd be friends until the end. The end came, but it didn't take me. Not completely. I still hear him sometimes. Late at night, when the wind slides against the cabin walls like fingertips. He hums that stupid song from high school, the one he always sang out of tune. It echoes through the vents, down the halls, until I cover my ears and count backward from 20. It helps. Sometimes. I've started recording my memories on cassette tapes. The old kind, the ones you flip halfway through. It feels safer than a hard drive, less likely to be tampered with. Less likely to speak back. Each tape is labeled by year, 1994 to now. I talk about the ritual, the chapel, the sigils, Caleb, the disappearances. The burn marks on my chest. The things I see when I close my eyes. If you're hearing this, I want you to understand something. You can kill a demon. But that doesn't mean it's gone. Sometimes it lingers in your voice. Hides in the space between your thoughts. Pretends to be your grief, your guilt, your reason for staying alive. And sometimes, you don't even know it's there until it speaks in your own words. Last night, someone knocked on my door. A girl, 16, maybe 17. Pale, freckles, wearing a heavy coat even though the air was warm. She held out her wrist before I said anything. The mark was there, burned into her skin. The same sigil Eric had. The same one that appeared in my mirror that morning after he died. She looked up at me with wide, tired eyes. You saw him too, didn't you? She asked. I didn't answer. I just closed the door. Locked it. Bolted it. Then sat in the dark and stared at the walls for hours. Because here's the truth I've come to learn, and it's why I keep recording. It never really ends. Not when you open the door. Not when you say its name. Not when you survive. Ashes blow away in the wind, but they always settle somewhere. And in the quiet, they wait. For someone like you.